Wayne answered a call this week. Several calls. I called Wayne. Hey, Wayne, how many weeks perfect attendance do you have here now?
Oh,
Like 2 years plus,
2 years
right?
and about 4 more weeks.
Awesome. Awesome. And Wayne truly is a man of God. And this week, this is about the first day I've been able to talk or sing or anything like that. And Wayne has stepped up when I called him, or texted him rather, and asked him, Wayne, could you do that lesson we talked about for Bible study? And he did. And I asked him if he could sing today, because as you see, our choir loft is empty. We do have 3 members of our choir out there today. The rest of them are either sick or out of town or something like that. And it's not that we have this huge 50-person choir. We have like 8, 9 people. But most of them are not with us today. So I called Wayne and I said, Wayne, would you please do something special for us this week? And he said he would, and this is what he wanted to do. And I thought, this is a perfect song, because today we talk about the servant Israel. Today we talk about Simon Peter and Andrew in the scriptures who followed Jesus and who answered that call. And they spent their lives then giving their testimony, praising God and proclaiming God's greatness. And that's exactly what that song is about. So thank you, Wayne. And thank you for answering calls. And that is exactly what we're talking about today, is about listening to the call from God. A couple of weeks ago, at the end of the sermon, I asked us to start thinking about what is Bethel's call and what is each of our own individual calls. What is it that we are called to do in our congregation, in our personal lives, and in our community? What is it? It's time to go forward. It is time to do things. It is time to grow and to build. And today I was torn about sticking strictly with that lectionary or talking about Martin Luther King, because tomorrow is the observed Martin Luther King holiday. And then I thought, you know what? There's nothing at odds between those two thought patterns. Dr. Martin Luther King was one of those who followed the call of God and who really helped lead this country and this world into at least a better place, if not a perfect place yet. So, when we are called, we have to confront several things. Now, looking at Isaiah, and I'll come back to Martin Luther King. I have a few little sayings I want to talk about of his. But when we are called, we can look at this unknown servant in the reading that Georgette brought us from Isaiah. He is in a dialogue with God, and he's like wanting to fulfill the calling of God, but confronting his own human failings. And frailty, that's a combo word. Frailty and failings put together. We all have things that are hard for us. We all have things that challenge us. For some, it's public speaking. I saw something on television news the other day about very important people who are scared to death to speak in public. They're like behind the scenes important people. Yeah, that's something that's hard to do. So I am always eternally grateful when I call someone and say, will you read the scriptures for us this week? And they say, yes, I will. Because for me, it's part of my job. I'll do this kind of thing every week and every day, whether it's teaching at university or here. I'm always talking. And but for some people, that's not what they always do. And to ask you to come out from there and bring us the Word of God is really special. So thank you, those who do that and answer that call. So we have some challenges. Who is this servant Israel that Isaiah speaks about? A bunch of scholars have spent a fair amount of time trying to figure that out. Some think it really is the nation of Israel, being a holy nation and being called of God. Some think, in a more classical Christian interpretation, that it is a foreshadowing of Jesus. Some other people think maybe it was an actual nameable historical character. We actually just can't resolve this. But for me, one of the really great things is we can identify with this servant. For me, this servant is each and every one of us, and it is each and every one of our congregations as a body. The servant speaks, first addressing coastland people, then identifying that they had a call prior to birth while in the womb, sort of in the same vein as Jeremiah. You're called before I knew you. Before we were born, we're called. The main theme of this whole thing is the servant's declaration of being called by God to a specific task. So here, he says, I've been called of God, but I've labored in vain. I spent my strength for nothing and for vanity. But yet, that servant brings a message of hope. The people of Israel maybe didn't want it right then. They weren't real happy to get that. Prophetic warnings, straighten up, fly right, do what you're supposed to do. They didn't want to hear that just then. And so they fell deeper and deeper and needed more prophets to call them out. Right now, we are in the beginning of a new calendar year, at least. Almost a new year of the church. We're about to have our annual meeting. We're about to elect our new officers and do all of those sorts of things that give us new starts. That's why I'm challenging us to our mission, to our call, to what's needed here. This season of Epiphany that we're in brings out light. We talked about shining the light on our gifts and bringing those forward, whatever those are. For Wayne, he has gifts of music, and he has gifts of prayer and of biblical knowledge. For me, I can wear a whole lot of hats gift, and I love doing that. Some have a gift of nurturing people, caring for them. And I experienced some of that this week as I was trying to recover from things of people reaching out and saying, can I bring you some chicken soup or something? Things like that. So that was helpful. Others have gifts of being able to organize things. I need some of those right now as I prepare to move. Let's find each of our gifts. Let's identify them. And I'll warn you now, don't be scared, I'll warn you now, but in a little while, in a few minutes, I'm going to ask you to maybe just think of one gift that might be yours and tell us what it is. 1 word, 2 words. But think about it. I'll give you a few minutes before we get there. When John is talking to his disciples about Jesus, and he's saying, I was called to baptize people with water. I was called to call people to repentance. I was called to do this. But there's somebody who was called for something even greater. And he tells them, this is the Son of God. And I wonder how John felt when his followers left him and went off with Jesus. I wonder if he was sad. Or if he was happy for them. I don't know, the Bible doesn't tell us. But I often think about that when I read this passage. Because his 2 guys went off and said, hey, Jesus, wait up, And after that, they were among Jesus' disciples. Jesus spoke to the man we refer to as Peter, Andrew's brother, and said that you are Peter, and some translations tell us the rock, right? The rock of the church. Call them out right then. I don't know if Peter knew what he was getting into, but Peter followed. Peter's one of those examples that we can all learn from because of his frailty and his failings as he went along, at the same time shouting about his strength. Maybe most of us remember towards the end of the story when Peter, after Jesus is crucified, is discovered in a courtyard somewhere and says, "Hey, weren't you one of those guys with Jesus?" And, no, that's not me. That's not me. 3 times denied him. Yet, for all intents, really became the founder of the Christian church. So no matter what our failings and no matter what our frailty, we are still called. We are still called to do what we can do. Oftentimes these scripture passages are read when it comes time to ordain somebody or to call somebody to become a student in seminary or something like that, because these passages are about being called into ministry. The thing is, they really don't apply just to people like me. They don't apply just to that person who's going to be the pastor of a particular church. What they apply to is each and every one of us. Maybe there's another cat in the building. I don't know why we all heard that. Anyway, they heard a noise and I see faces going, what was that? But we are all called to be ministers. All called to be ministers. Different kinds of ministers. Different gifts of ministers. But there is the ministry of all of us here. And that's what we're focusing on right now in our studies, is to find those ministries. John the Baptist is a wonderful model for that, for each of us. Kind of a baseline to go from. He points to the one who is salvation, rather than drawing attention to himself. He is a minister. He has a ministry. But in his ministry, he points to Jesus. He even watches those 2 of his own disciples leave and follow Jesus. Most of us would probably admit that one of the challenges of being a disciple, because being a minister, each of us is being a disciple too. One of those challenges is not to lose sight of the true center and the true focus of our ministry. What is that? What is that? Not a hypothetical question for you. What is that center of our ministry and focus? What is it? Who knows? Test, quiz.
Doing God's work.
Doing God's work. I'll take that. How do we do that? Where do we keep our eyes?
Focus on God.
On God. On Jesus. That's our center. Yes, wonderful. That is our center. It's easy for in a church for us to be all about us, all about the church. Later we're going to have announcements that are all about Bethel. Okay? That's easy for that to happen. All about the building, all about whatever programming is happening on. But above all, for us to grow, to gain and expand, it has to be about the ministry, about God, about God's work, about Jesus, about welcoming everybody, about bringing them in, and about bringing our love out of this building and to the people. Sometimes a new member will finally visit a church, right? I'm talking about, let's say after a long time, someone becomes a new member. And when they finally visited the church, it was often because somebody invited them. Some of you are visitors today, and some of you just happened in, curious about the building, liked it, but were invited back. Some members here were invited as friends of other people, and then they came back. When we invite someone to visit our church, what is it we want? We want them to come and see what we really can't describe in just words. Experience that worship and that being filled with the Spirit and that being filled with love and bringing it out. A lot of people are a little uncomfortable with following Andrew's example and going and finding his brother and bringing him over. Like, hey, come over here. I want you to meet this guy and follow him in ministry. A lot of people are really uncomfortable with that. It's not easy. To do it, to be comfortable with it, we have to believe in what it is we're bringing someone to come and see. We have to be dedicated to whatever that is. And what it is for our center is Jesus, is God, is God's work, is us being God's hands and eyes and feet and ears and mouths. Not the God that says, these are the rules and we're going to do this exactly this way and we must wear this to church. No, not those. This is the God that says, come on, I don't care if you're covered with smelly fish. Come with me. Come on, I don't care if you broke a rule before. Come with me now. Learn a new life. Learn a new love. In doing that work, there are lots of challenges. And in getting ready for today, I looked up some quotes. And I found a whole bunch. I made this list of Martin Luther King quotes, and I could have probably done a whole service just going down the list and talking about each one. But I'm just going to read them to you, because for me, these all apply to us being active and being ministers for what we believe and finding our own calls. After I read these, remember I warned you, I'm going to ask if some of you have thought of perhaps a gift that you have, a call that you have, that you already share, that you already do, or that maybe you want to. And we won't spend long, and I won't make anybody do it if they don't want to, but I'm hoping a couple of you at least will raise your hands and say, I do this. So, here's these quotes. We must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope. I liked that because things go wrong, but we keep trying. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Forgiveness is not an occasional act. It is a permanent attitude. I have decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear. Faith is taking the first step, even when you don't see the whole staircase. Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? Never succumb to the temptation of bitterness. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. We may all have come in on different ships, but we're in the same boat now. The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. Change does not roll in on the wheels of inevitability, but comes through continuous struggle. Love is the only force capable of transforming an enemy into a friend. There comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe nor politic nor popular, but he must take it because conscience tells him it is right. Let no man pull you so low as to hate him. And finally, if you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. Now, I'll start, but then I'm going to ask you, if any of you have a call of some sort. I'm not talking about a call to go to seminary and enter the ministry. I'm talking about a call in your life that is your way of being a minister and of showing the love of God. Now for me, my call is to be your pastor and your music minister. That is my call, to support you and teach you and love you and help you and care for you. That is my call, and that is what I am doing. It is also my call to share us with our community, and that is what I am trying to do. So that's me. Now I'm going to come out there so that I can see you a little better, take off these reading glasses, and see if anyone will share with us, just for a couple of minutes, what their call is.
My call is dependability, to step up when there's a need, when no matter what it is, and to help fulfill it.
Wonderful. Yes. Anyone else?
To help with projects and technical assistance, to help keep the church working, sing in choir, and help let people know what we're about outside just our own little community here.
You gave me one hint on the phone, and I was able to make my garage door openers work again. Wait.
It may sound redundant from what you've already said earlier, but my ministry is my music. Every Sunday night you'll find me down at Rock of Faith, and almost every Sunday night I'm singing a solo down there, a cappella.
Wonderful gifts. Mario?
Well, I think my gift that I had was from being born in a family with lots of limitations. Some people would call it misery. And being a kid in that kind of conditions made me a person that appreciates the opportunities, being grateful, and instead of complaining, taking advantage of the chance that I see, appreciating more, and having parents that my dad was a very smart person. He didn't have any formal education, but he was very smart, and my mom was a very compassionate person. I think I got a good combination from that.
Wonderful gifts. Carol, you know, every time I see you, it's a gift.
My ears are not working at all this morning. I'm sorry.
I said seeing you is a gift.
Oh,
You always make me smile.
Thank you so much.
And just coming, especially with your ears not working. Great. Oh, so I'll come back so it's more of a chance that she'll hear me. That's great, identifying gifts. And we'll do more identifying gifts, because some of our next things are to identify our congregational gifts that we're bringing to the community. Now, a few of those, of course, are the pet food bank, the arts ministry, where the orchestra will be starting up again soon. They have a concert March 29th. And just being here for the community. So identifying our calls, identifying our gifts, and then having the courage to step out and use them and make those calls to other people. That's our lessons for today. Amen. Our song